program this morning. And before that, good morning to everyone. My name is Berlin Martin, and I will be your MC for the working portion of today's program, Fisheries and FSM. So, first, I would like to recognize and convey my respect to the following dignitaries. His Excellency David W. Panuelo, President of the FSM. Members of the Domestic Legislature, cabinet members of the national government and the state, representatives of the fisheries industry, domestic fisheries industry, members of the clergy, and everyone. Please allow me to invite Father Kenneth for the invitation.
Thank you, and good morning to you all. Before I pray, let me just share a little piece with you. A young man was trying to lose weight, and so he decided to cut down his weight. His sister wanted to help him. So one morning, the sister told his brother, I could share a donut with you. We split in half. And the brother replied, let's split 2 donuts. So let us ask God's for blessing on this important son. Good and gracious God, the policy maker of our nation gathers this morning for this important son. We ask you to send your spirit into their hearts, that they will be encouraged, enlightened, and determined to work together as one, to do away with the individualistic thinking, but more for the common good of our nation. This is an important summit as we try to create policies for the fisheries in our nations, and really for the common good of our people in this nation. We ask for special blessing on the leadership of our nation down to the leadership of each of the states, that together we can make these islands a better place for our people. During this difficult time, we beg your mercy and goodness to take care of them as they gather in this hall, and those who are joining on Zoom, that we will be healthy and be able to deal with the task ahead of us. Lord, these are prayers that comes from you, and we return them to you to keep watch on the summit. These 2 days they will happen. Take care of us, Lord, and may your Spirit continue to guide us in the days to come. In the name of your Son, and our Lord Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Ken, for those inspirational words. It is my honor to verify the representative of the governor,
Hey, mashallah.
Mr. Hubert Manala, or his His Excellency, President David, Honorable Secretaries, Cabinet members of the National Government, Honorable members, and distinguished representatives of the great states of Chuk, Yap, Fishery, and Longline, government officials, our strong national government, NGO representatives, of course, from camp here, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, and a very warm Kasaleria to everyone. As an invitee, I feel a bit awkward delivering this part of the program, but it truly is an honor to, on behalf of the Honorable Governor Reed B. Oliver and the leadership of Bombay State, join our national counterparts in welcoming all of us to our first National Fisheries Investment Policy Summit. Governor Oliver conveys his greetings and at the same time sends his regrets for not being able to be with us today. He will, however, try to find a new time to join us tomorrow. Bombay takes this opportune time to acknowledge and thank everyone who has taken part and contributed to the work prepared for us the next couple of days. Without wanting to leave out anyone, we wish to especially recognize and thank our National Department of Resource Development and our NORMA Board of Directors and Management for the tireless effort and work they have labored through to prepare and bring us together today, even with this. Next to our human resources, fisheries is arguably the second most valuable resource and sector the FSM has. Tuna, in particular, is a valuable renewable resource that provides direct and indirect food security and also an important source of nutrition for our people, and currently the largest source of domestic revenue to our governments. Our aim, as put to us, is to develop and align our fisheries policy to support economic growth in the FSM, to maximize the value of our participatory rights under the vessel-based scheme. We are hopeful that while we collectively address good and safe investment policies that can help guide and maximize returns derived from our marine resources, that important policy principle of real and clear inclusiveness of all stakeholders in this process, including investment decisions, monitoring of projects, impact assessment, and validations of investment outcomes, are also necessarily considered and clearly defined therein. Our agenda for the next 2 days is full. Today, we look forward to hearing and learning from the resource and management people. We are grateful that today's agenda also includes presentations by some key industry groups that could shed some light to help increase sector productivity and enhance other growth opportunities. We are especially graced with the presence of the Chief Executive Officer of the nation, His Excellency, President David Anuelo. His presence gives emphasis to the significance of this undertaking. We look forward to his deliberation and guidance on this very important topic. As stakeholders in this work, we are here to cooperate and collaborate with everyone in the advancement of our fisheries policy development. Much has been done, and we are truly appreciative of the opportunity to finally be able to consult with and hear from other stakeholders on this important matter. We cannot agree more that this work is crucial, especially at this juncture in our nation building and as the country prepares for the challenges that lay ahead of us in line of the forthcoming expiry of the amended compact in 2023. We pray and trust that the outcome of our collective effort, be it now or later, truly benefit those that we are called to serve and provide the opportunity to grow healthy together. Again, welcome. May the Lord bless us all to the glory of His name. Thank you very much. Thank you, Director Ramon. It is now my honor to invite President Manuel for his special remark. President Manuel.
For the non-convenient speakers, just give me a moment to express my courtesies in our mother tongue to respect our traditional leaders. Tiffany dan bukan sama coach rangwat makin sapi o kakao sampa and so covers also tong covers. Munikan patuyan na nito sa kalata mo Tiffany choro sa karmisip pa doon raksoko and bobeyu isoko sa bulmar ikan ko nadalan ko o nangkariye ko ritual wow on kuburkan karos na ito batuan na nilang kaibigan karos. My respects to the traditional leaders of our land in Gobe and throughout the FSM, honorable governors of Gobe State, Chuk, Pushai, and Yap. My respects to the members of our respective state legislatures throughout our nation and especially Gobe who are present during our Fisheries Investment Summit this morning, today. Father Ken, our figure of the Catholic Diocese here. Also, I recognize and respect our members of our cabinet at the national, state levels, non-government organizations and partners, representatives of the fishing industry, because this is our first Fisheries Investment Policy Summit. I also want to pay a special recognition to our Executive Director of NORMA, Mr. Yuchi Candelina, Deputy Director of NORMA, Mr. Matthew Chigil, and Hubert, representative of our governor, who spoke before me. Thank you, Hubert. Ladies and gentlemen, today gives me great pleasure to bring you greetings, warm greetings to all of you. My Pikasanelia to you, Lenwo, Ranangim, and Mogetin. It is a privilege and an honor for me as President of the nation to directly participate this very important summit today. I just received a message. Somebody sent me a message to coin or make it a legal, what do you call when you coin a term, paradise in our backyard, to registered, so it can be a trademark. And so I always say that because today, when we undertake a very important topic of discussion on fisheries today, we want to also talk about conservation for the long term. So I am pleased to see the high-level participation of our private sector, government and non-government participation at this Fisheries Summit, which indicates how strongly we associate ourselves with the 5 years in the making draft policy that throughout today and the rest of the summit days you will be reviewing with great attention, as it will likely open new opportunities for each of our respective states and our young nation. I am particularly very pleased to know that the purpose and objective of this summit is to consider and adopt the final draft of the National Oceanic Fisheries Investment Policy for the FSM. This will also be the first national policy ever adopted, although emphasis is on economic or oceanic fisheries investment in the FSM. I was chairman of the R&D committee in our Congress for a good 3 to 4 years. And I will tell you today, all of you who are experts in fisheries, more than myself, and I see a lot of you here, that the fishery sector is a very complex sector. I thought that fisheries was just a simple fisheries, but if you've been in a position like I have been as a member of Congress, particularly chairman of our R&D committee, you will know what I mean, and some of you have been following and active in this sector will know that this is a very complex sector. This summit is the culmination of over 5 years of workshops, symposiums, seminars, and conferences, not to mention consultations at the national level and state level, supported by expert advice from our friends at the Foreign Fisheries Agency, FFA, the Pacific Community, or SPC, and cooperation with our private sector and fishing industry of the FSM in particular. I am very pleased that you are all here now to support its final consideration and adoption and move to the next step of implementing the policy once it is approved or adopted by the FSM Congress. I can assure you that I keep my full support for this policy to be adopted, and I look forward to an outcome resolution to be signed by the 4 governors, I hope, and myself, to demonstrate this strong support. As some of you will remember, during my inauguration as president of the FSM on July 29, 2019, I stated that my administration's theme was our actions today is our nation's prosperity tomorrow. It's just not a simple term, but trying to constrict a term that can mean something. Today and tomorrow during this conference or summit, for those of us gathered here for the Fisheries Summit, we will take a collective and decisive action to adopt this draft fisheries policy. This action is a big milestone in our continuing efforts of nation building. I commend those of you who have been involved in this important work over these last 5 years to get it adopted, and I thank you for your hard work and dedication to complete this policy, which shows that no matter who sits in our political offices, whether we are governors or former future presidents, that we all as Father Ken said in his prayer, one together unified in our purpose to make life in the FSM more prosperous for all who call our beautiful islands home. We have seen tremendous growth. Some of you will know this very well. Over our fishery sector over the last decade since the introduction of the Vessel Day Scheme, VDS. And I had a lot of learning as chairman of our R&D committee over the 3-4 years to deal with Norma over the years on the complex issues of VDS or the Vessel Day Scheme. With the introduction of the VDS or the Vessel Day Scheme, it has transferred the control of our tuna fisheries as resource owners. Respective members of the parties to the Nauru Agreement, or PNA, as some of you or most of you are familiar, have also seen fourfold increases in our revenues, just as FSM has seen. Fisheries remains our largest local revenue source for our young nation, and investments onshore has increased over the last 5 years, creating new jobs and employment, or employing many of our citizens. Revenue from fisheries has grown. The culmination of over 5 years of workshops, symposiums, seminars and conferences, not to mention consultations at the national level and state level, supported by expert advice from our friends at the Foreign Fisheries Agency, FFA, the Pacific Community or SPC, and cooperation of our private sector and fishing industry of the FSM in particular. I am very pleased that you are all here now to support its final consideration and adoption and move to the next step of implementing the policy once it is approved or adopted by the FSM Congress. I can assure you that I keep my full support for this policy to be adopted, and I look forward to an outcome resolution to be signed by the 4 governors, I hope, and myself to demonstrate this strong support. As some of you will remember, during my inauguration as president of the FSM on July 29, 2019, I stated that my administration's theme was our actions today is our nation's prosperity tomorrow. It's just not a simple term, but trying to constrict a term that can mean something. Today and tomorrow during this conference or summit, for those of us gathered here for the Fisheries Summit, we will take a collective and decisive action to adopt this draft fisheries policy. This action is a big milestone in our continuing efforts of nation building. I commend those of you who have been involved in this important work over these last 5 years to get it adopted, and I thank you for your hard work and dedication to complete this policy, which shows that no matter who sits in our political offices, whether we are governors or former and future presidents, that we all, as Father Ken said in his prayer, one together unified in our purpose to make life in the FSM more prosperous for all who call our beautiful islands home. We have seen tremendous growth. Some of you will know this very well. Over our fishery sector over the last decade since the introduction of the Vessel Day Scheme, VDS. And I had a lot of learning as chairman of our R&D committee over the 3-4 years to deal with Norma over the years on the complex issues of VDS or the Vessel Day Scheme. With the introduction of the VDS or the Vessel Day Scheme, it has transferred the control of our tuna fisheries as resource owners. Respective members of the parties to the Nauru Agreement, or PNA, as some of you or most of you are familiar, have also seen fourfold increases in our revenues, just as FSM has seen. Fisheries remains our largest local revenue source for our young nation, and investments onshore has increased over the last 5 years, creating new jobs and employment, or employing many of our citizens. Revenue from fisheries has grown, as I've said, fourfold from what used to be 15 million annually prior to 2008. And now, as we speak, current, we're averaging just shy of 70 million annually in the last 6 years. Crucially, the revenue from fisheries directly impacts the states of Yap, Chuk, Bonbay, and Kushai. When I was a member of Congress, I was part of the actions taken to earmark 20% of all fishing revenues, as well as 20% of national GRT, or gross revenue tax, and 50% of the corporate tax revenue, which goes directly into the FSM trust fund. And yesterday, when I received my draft speech, I asked that Finance provide the latest numbers, because you know now that our Constitutional Convention delegates are preparing to come back to discuss proposed constitutional amendments, and I think one of the top issues or proposed, or what they will be looking at as proposed amendment, is revenue sharing. We know by law we've established the comeback revenue sharing distribution formula, and also we follow certain distribution formula within our laws of the national government to distribute revenues throughout our nation. I was also, by believing that resources should be given to the states, I was part of members of Congress, I'm not taking credit here, that made it possible to earmark 20% of all fisheries fees, 20% of the GRD, and 50% of the corporate tax to go directly into our FSM trust fund. So today, I asked Finance, and thank you, Secretary Amor, Eugene, to give us the update of our FSM trust fund. And I believe I communicated with the Lieutenant Governor of Bonbay State when he wrote the national government to ask or discuss the issue of revenue sharing. So I just want to put into perspective that as of now, part of the revenue earmark that I just spoke about, if we look at January 2011, and I use that because that's just about when I came into Congress, and was one of the members who did some of the actions in our Congress to catapult the growth of our FSM Trust Fund. At the time, 2011, I picked out, I know they put 2015 here from Finance, but I'll go back to 2011 because that's when I entered Congress. The FSM Trust Fund at the time was less than 7 million. With all the efforts that we put into building our trust fund, fast forward to today, our FSM Trust Fund as of June 30th, 2021, FSM Trust Fund is over 300 million as we speak right now. And going further, I ask that our Department of Finance provide the sub-accounts for the states. This is important to highlight because I know we're talking about development from our fisheries sector. As of now, the sub-accounts that part of these revenues are building for the state, I think Lieutenant Governor of Bonbay State might have been surprised, I'm not sure. But Bonbay State sub-account under our trust fund is about 30 million today as we speak. Followed by Chuk, which is close to 20 million, Yap 12 million, and Koshai 8 plus million in their sub-accounts, state sub-accounts in the FSM Trust Fund. So you can see that over the time we're talking about, close to 70 million out of the trust fund has been invested or deposited in the FSM state accounts, sub-accounts under the trust fund. So I want to highlight this because fisheries being our largest revenue share, FSM is not just using it on daily development needs of our infrastructure and others, but the money is in fact being deposited into our trust fund. 70 million of it went into state accounts. So without states doing anything in terms of building their trust fund, it is already being built, and I look forward to inviting states to also take part in contributing to their respective state sub-accounts within our trust fund. During the recent period of explosive fisheries growth, the FSM has become a major fishing state, and I thank our hardworking folks in our national government, state government. With 28 purseaners flagged in the FSM and 17 longliners flagged and based in the FSM. FSM ports, particularly Pone Bay and Koshai, have risen to be two of the busiest ports in the Pacific. FSM has seen transshipments averaging what Norma has put here, about 844 purseine transshipments and 430 longline transshipments annually between 2017 and 2020, before COVID-19. In addition, Koshai's port, which with its innovative river container shipments, has exported about 810 to 899 40-foot river containers in 2019 and 2020 respectively. In 2021, or the current year, despite the COVID environment, Koshai has exported 967 river containers to date, and it's experiencing or expecting to export around 1,500 plus river containers by the end of the year. So this is a substantial progress in terms of economic development by trade or revenue source. This has resulted in employment opportunities for our young population in Koshai. Today, a fish processing plant has been established in Koshai, which is capable of producing up to 50 metric tons of frozen tuna daily and employs over 150 FSM citizens who call Koshai home. There is also a discussion underway for expansion to processing value-added tuna packages, creating additional 100 jobs in Koshai. Norma is developing a long-term partnership with our biggest and longest residing partner, I believe that is Liancheng, to utilize our large Longline party allowable efforts that will translate into transshipment in all of our 4 FSM states. I trust the new administration in Chuk, and I know Alex Narun is very active in wanting development of fisheries in Chuk. Yap stands to capitalize on long-line transshipments with the closure of the Palau ESET to long-line fishing. The processing facility in Pone Bay remains to be revitalized amidst the COVID-19 situation, but I trust with our partners' support, we will get it back into operation and employing our citizens who are eager to improve their lives and lives of their families. I have asked Norma, working closely with our FSM Department of R&D and the Department of Finance and Administration, to develop the framework for FTS discounts. We've done quite extensive studies in the past, I know Mr. Movic undertook some of the work that still lays as an informal assessment of the economic contributions of our fishing industry. So this working group will be recommending the types of discounts that we will give our fishing partners who are operating within our exclusive economic zone. As you know that our laws also distinguishes NORMA with the mandate to reserve certain fishing days to our domestic local fishing companies while selling all of it to foreign partners to ensure that local domestic fishing companies that contribute more to our local economic development gets enough fishing days to keep their companies sustainable. So we are still following that mandate, and I thank Norma and the board. I thank the Norma board also today for helping to implement a lot of our fisheries activities in favor of our nation and our states. So the discounts, including monitoring and evaluation components for the appropriate level of mutually beneficial programs or activities, to be transparent, to ensure that such partners forge real and tangible benefits to the FSM through long-term planning, coordinated investment, and allocations. I want to pause here. I know this is not part of my speech, but this morning as I was going through what I will be sharing today, prepared by Norma, I want to pause here and I beg for your patience to briefly pause and have some reflection because I think it's very important. I said earlier that fisheries sector is a very complex sector. It takes long years for our fisheries experts to master the issues and make sure that what we are doing, FSM's interest comes first. And that's always been my policy as a president of the nation. When countries as big as China or United States come in with issues, very strong in the background, I'm always thinking about what is in the best interest of our nation, first and foremost, before we forge partners with our entities, private entities, or with governments. So, while use of our resources, fisheries being the biggest revenue source, it's important that we also balance it with conservation for the long term. Because you all know that the state of our natural resources in our exclusive economic zone will not last forever. So with the science that motivates the kind of policies and the activities we're taking, Norma, in conjunction or with PNA and FFA, they are also very strong in the area of conservation. And we must be very strong in conservation because this is resources that are not infinite. It's finite or finite. I was sharing with one of you earlier this morning that last night I had a long discussion with the Palau president because today we are having a Micronesian President Summit starting today in a few hours. And Palau, as you know, little different from the FSM. They've been severely hit with the reduction of revenues in the tourism sector. Palau gets, you know, the visitors industry in Palau is so strong. But I learned from the president of Palau that they borrowed upwards in the neighborhood of 100 million to keep their government going, operation-wise, and the development programs that they must run as a sovereign nation. And he recently visited Washington, D.C. to impress upon the U.S. government about some of the problems they're facing now. So Palau has closed off their ESET, as you know, and they have been one of the champions of conservation, which is good. On the opposite end, FSM over the years, as chairman of the R&D committee, we know that we have been putting a lot of effort in making sure that fisheries continues to bring into our nation revenue source that can continue to build upon our development. And I've shared some of it with you, with some of the earmarks and then developments that we need to continue to pursue. So even with the strongest efforts, I know Mr. Kostuga is here with MCD. We've partnered with the outside partners like Wade Institute, Oceans 5, the National Geographic Society, Pristine Seas, to conduct some of the marine spatial planning that will take place, but COVID has delayed it. And I thank MCT and others for always emphasizing conservation. We've done a lot in the area of near shore, and I think a lot of work has been put in there. Hubert is here with the state, with the NGOs that must continue to emphasize our sanctuaries near shore. But here we are talking about ocean resources, our exclusive economic zone, with partners and entities throughout the Pacific region. So I think we've tried to strike a balance by making sure that while we are developing the fisheries industry, that conservation must be a very strong component of our long-term view to continue to conserve our tuna stocks. So what I'm trying to share with you, I think you may be seeing Palau being pressured right now because of a revenue shortage, that they might reverse it to make it 30-70. So today I'm having a meeting with the president of Micronesia from Palau to FSM Marshall Islands, Kiribati and Nauru. Some of the issues we will be discussing, but conservation needs to be emphasized so that if we or Palau goes to 30-70, maybe like the FSM, we're not quite 30 yet in terms of conservation areas that we must close off to allow regeneration of fish. But we're looking at that through the partnership that I just talked about with the Wade Foundation, the Blue Prosperity Micronesia. It's not about trying to close off everything. I'm sensitive to our lawmakers, especially in Congress. They understand that fisheries continues to be our largest source of revenue. So if we over-conserve spots or no-take zones within our ESET, it's going to affect that. But I think our efforts should continue to push for that, because without conservation, we will lose the fisheries resources that we count on as our very biggest revenue source for our nation. And so this must be done in concert with FFA, PNA, and other entities that are working with us throughout the region. So I think we are striking a good balance between utilization of our resources and the conservation that we must all aspire for. So in consideration of the policy, I ask that you approach it from a national perspective with the background of conservation that I've just talked about, because that has to continue, including the central idea is, of course, that this policy must be one that we can benefit, and that each state, and not just one, benefit, that we create a level playing field for all of the states. We ensure that all 4 states have the level playing field while recognizing that there are unique differences and challenges. And to put a national lens, these can be overcome with alignment of our policies at the national and state governments, including our laws and regulations and processes. This policy can only succeed with our mutual cooperation and due diligence in ensuring cohesive policy development and especially implementation. You have my word that the Panuelo George administration will work closely with you and all respective entities that are gathered here and those who are joining us from overseas to ensure resources are identified and secured to enable a strong investment climate for our fisheries to flourish. We will work with our National Congress to identify resources that can be put towards investments in infrastructure to attract more foreign vessels to using our respective ports throughout the FSM. So today and tomorrow during this Fisheries Investment Policy Summit, it represents a big milestone, as I said earlier, in our nation's development and history. And I thank you all for your perseverance, dedication, and commitment to this process. I ask that we conclude this summit with the adoption of the policy so that we can start work on creating new opportunities for our young nation to prosper. I wish to conclude here by congratulating all of you and wish you all a very successful and productive summit. Kailangan Rere Chungol Sakarata. Thank you all very much for giving me the opportunity to say these few words during this important Fisheries Investment Policy Summit. Kailangan Michael.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the informative and wonderful speech. Now we will take 5 minutes break. Can I have your attention, please? There will be a photo-op with the President. We invite the state reps, cabinet members, as well as the national. Thank you.
Zooming in, can you hear us? If you can, please turn on your cameras for a Zoom photo session.
No problem.
Jamal, can you hear me?
kewajibane ipilata umeleliyo kesempaniti nalaliunse imerong kasabag-sabu wimenese wiyen weweki dami sa pungrem wijiwala. And I swear, in a song waros lingman, ubilusul kalaka, mening maning mende. Ilang ito, ilang uwin kategiyang mo, resort to niyo, from now and forever. Go with your kid, ipilata,
And in this particular case, we are hoping that there will be two co-chairs from the respective delegations. And so, with that said, I would like to now call for nominations of the summit co-chairs, the first of the summit, and the floor is open. I hope Jack, Chuk, and Kosrai are able to listen to us. Maybe a thumbs up. So the floor is open for chairs, and if there are any nominations.
Chairman.
Yes, please go ahead.
Are we voting on the chair or the co-chair?
Both co-chairs. So nominations are open for
Oh,
co-chairs.
Okay.
I think Duke would like to nominate
Elena for, R&D.
R&D rep, FSM R&D rep
For the chair.
for the chair.
Thank you very much, Chuk State, for your nomination of representative from the Department of Resources and Development, FSM National Government, seconded by Point Bay State. So, if there are no objections to that, you have your first co-chair, Ms. Elena Akinaga, as a co-chair here in Point Bay State for the summit. And so, congratulations to you, Elena. You may take the chair here.
Thank you, Director. So let us continue. Maybe we can go for the nomination for the co-chair. Yes, Director Yamada.
Thank you, Chair. Pompey nominates Chuk as co-chair for this Fisheries Summit.
Okay, Pompey nominates Chuk for co-chair for the Fisheries Summit. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, it has been seconded. So Chuk will be the co-chair for the summit. Thank you. Does Chuk has a specific person?
Chair Arnold?
Okay, thank you. So congratulations to Roger Arnold for the co-chair. Okay, to begin with, first I'd like to pay my respects and acknowledgement to the traditional leaders of the hosting state, to the Honorable Governors of Pompey, Chuk, Fishery, and Yap, Honorable and distinguished delegates from Pompey, Fishery, Chuk, and Yap, and the national government, representatives of the domestic fishing industry, representatives of the regional organizations, FFA and SPC, observers, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, Kaselelia, and good morning. Representing the national government, in particular the Department of Resources and Development, I am happy to serve as your co-chair for day one of this very important Fisheries Summit. Tomorrow's session will be co-chaired by the Chairman of the NORMA Board of Directors, Mr. Roger Arnold. Although he is unable to join us physically, he is tuning in with us via Zoom. Because of our participants are joining us mostly via Zoom, I kindly ask that we be conscious of the time by keeping comments and remarks as brief and concise as possible. And that includes our presenters to also stay within their allotted time. If anyone that's tuning in via Zoom has a question, we kindly ask that you turn on your camera when you answer or when you ask a question. So in preparation for day two of our Fisheries Summit, which will cover the elements of the fisheries investment policy, it is important that we begin today by understanding the state of play in as far as fisheries management and development. Today we will hear from different presenters on various key aspects of our oceanic fishery. This will provide some context and prepare us for the second day session to discuss the fisheries investment policy. So for the first presentation, it will be on status of stocks. As in any fisheries management process, it is important to know first what stocks we are dealing with and the status of its health. The first presentation today will inform us about the health of the key tuna stocks. This will be presented by Mr. Bradley Phillip, the Assistant Director of the Fishery Science Division of NORMA. May I have Mr. Phillip? So for the other states who are tuning in via Zoom, can you please put your microphones on mute? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to make sure if people in the back can also hear me. Yeah. Kaselelia Mainko, good morning to the honorable members of the state and national representatives. Also welcome all participants near and far. My respects to all. My name is Nathan Bradley Phillip Jr. I'll be doing the presentation on the status of the key tuna stocks in the Western and Central Pacific Ocean. So please bear with me. It's a lot of science, but I'll try to make it fun and as Senator Walter said earlier, to tone it down a bit. So I'll do my best to tone it down. Sorry, next. Next slide. So this is the outline of the presentation. We'll start out with the key tuna stocks in the Western, Central, and Pacific Ocean. We'll mainly be talking about 3 key tuna stocks that are being targeted by the Longline and percent clears in our waters, and also why they're, is a key area that they come in fishing, some environmental conditions, and we'll talk more about that in the later presentations. And also look at how much is being caught by the distant water fishing nations in our zone, and look at the historical catch trends in our FSM EEC, as well as how we're compared to the global catches. And then how these catches determine the status of the stocks thanks to the best scientific advice by the SPC fisheries scientists in New Caledonia and Omea. And they are also zooming in with us, so shout out to them. And we'll also look at how the tuna fisheries in the WCPO is compared to other regional fisheries management organizations on how we manage the stocks, and look at other environmental conditions as well as the future forecasting on how climate change is affecting tuna in our waters, based on the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change reports and published reports and other publications. And then we'll end with the summary and wrap up of everything, making sure that you all know what's happening with the key tuna stocks in the Western and Central Pacific Ocean. Next slide, please. So, 3 target tuna species in the Western and Central Pacific will be the main focus of my presentation. There are other stocks, but these are the main 3 target tuna species that are being fished out from our exclusive economic zone by the distant water fishing nations. I'll use my pointer, so I'll show. This is the big eye, this is the skipjack, this is the yellowfin. And in the Western Pacific, the key area for all these tuna species in our zone, he said, and all the other part of the Western Pacific is because of this Western Pacific warm pool, where it creates significant and the right conditions, especially the warm surface temperatures for the tuna to migrate to our waters, spawn, reproduce, and also find food on a yearly cycle for it to make sure that the stocks are within our waters and for us to fish, and also as part of our subsistence livelihoods. And the Western Pacific warm pool is also has significant effects on how the migration of tuna comes to the west and east migrations, even the changes in the El Nino and La Nina cycle, especially for the skipjack tuna. And this is a hot spot for the skipjack tuna, where it's almost half of the world catches from the Persian fleet is caught in the Western and Central Pacific. About half of the catches of the big-eye tuna is captured by the Longline fleet. Around 3/4 of the catches of yellowfin tuna is also captured by the Persian fleet. We'll talk more about environmental conditions on later slides as well. Next slide, please. So, all these catches, what does it look like? So these plots show the historical catch trends in the FSM exclusive economic zone. On this side is the Longline catch from the 90s to the early 2000s. So this is for the big eye. We started out around almost 8,000 metric tons of tuna being caught yearly, and we're currently in recent years around 3,000, almost 2,500 metric tons are caught yearly. For the yellowfin, Longline fleet has caught around almost 6,000 metric tons on yearly in the 1990s to now 2,000 to 2,500 metric tons. And if we concentrate on this figure here, it's mainly on the skipjack tuna by the Persian fleet, and showing that in the current years, we are around 100,000, 200,000, 250,000 metric tons of tuna are being caught, skipjack tuna are being caught by the Persian fleet. And this is all color-coded by different fishing nations, different distant water fishing nations, like Korea, Japan, Taiwan, China, and so forth. Next slide, please. So all of these catches are compared to the world tuna catch, especially the past 3 years for the exclusive economic zone. So globally, we are around nearing the just above the 5 million metric tons of tuna being caught globally, and within the WCBFC is around almost 3 million. That's half of the world tuna catch within the WCBFC. From that, PNA, parties to the now agreement, is catching around 1.5 million tons. That's almost half of what's being caught, or half of what's being caught in the WCBFC. Lastly, for the FSM, it's around 250,000 metric tons of tuna caught yearly, and that's about 14% of what's being caught in the PNA, and that's are about 4% of the tuna catches worldwide. Next slide, please. So what does this mean for the tuna stocks? And as part of the key presentation, are the stocks healthy? Are we fishing it too hard? What's going on? And thanks to scientific providers by SPC, they have this blood called the Maturo blood. I think it was given the name when it was first introduced at a science committee meeting in the Maturo Marshall Islands. And from there on, it became known as the Maturo blood. So in this quadrant here, it shows the 3 key tuna species. It means that if you're here, the tuna stocks are healthy. Next slide, it will show that the yellowfin, big eye, next to this slide, yellowfin, big eye, yellowfin, and the skipjack are all in this quadrant. It means that, next slide please, there's no overfishing and it's not overfished. So I'll have to repeat that again. The stocks are in a healthy state. It's no overfishing and it's not being overfished. This is based on all the scientific data and analytics given by our scientific providers from SPC. Next slide, please. Another way to look at this is all the 3 key tuna species are in the green in the WCBFC. So this is the green tower, which again means that the fish are not overfished and no overfishing is occurring. As compared to other regional tuna management organizations, it's all in red, which means that some of the fish are already being overfished and overfishing is occurring. Just want to repeat that again. It's all in the green, WCBFC. We are not overfishing or the stocks are not being overfished. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned earlier on environmental conditions, the ENSO phenomenon or the El Nino and La Nina cycle plays a major role on how skipjack tuna migrates in and out of our exclusive economic zone. So during El Nino cycles, the warmer water is across all the equatorial region. So fishing is almost the same across the equatorial region as shown in all these bloods here. You're catching tuna across the board. As for La Nina cycles, the fish, skipjack tuna, move west. The fleets, Persian fleet, follow the skipjack tuna moving to the west. We are in the west, and that's really good for our catches and also helping, generating the revenue. But doesn't mean that it's only the west movement helps us with, fishing. We also have our ports within the states that also get services on how longlines are being unloaded, their catches, as well as Persian vessels doing their transshipments, as well as other provisioning services that's being given to our local businesses. So it looks like it's a win-win for all. As you all know, the ENSO cycles, El Nino La Nina cycles occur every 3 to 4 years, and each of these cycles also have its own strength and different effects on different regions of the Pacific Islands. Next slide, please. I'll try to move really fast now because I'm running out of time, according to the timekeeper. So The future of the predictions from the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, is forecasting, what's going to happen to the tuna stocks with climate change. It's showing that the skipjack and the yellowfin tuna will be moving in an eastwardly trend in 2050. Next slide. So as shown here, by 2050, skipjack and yellowfin will be mainly moving to the Eastern Pacific Ocean. Next slide. As for the pig-eye tuna, it will mainly moving to the Western Pacific. What does this mean for PNA and the WCBFC? It means that the tuna stocks, especially the targeted skipjack and yellowfin, will be moving out of your exclusive economic zone into the ICES and more into the Eastern Pacific Ocean. Next slide, please. So to wrap up the presentation, as you've seen earlier, forecasted that the tuna stocks will be moving in an eastward trend and others to the west. And so cycle also plays a significant role on how skipjack tuna is migrating in and out of our waters, especially our exclusive economic zone. Regional stocks are managed regionally, and WCBFC conservation management measures are working. These tuna stocks are very well managed under the PNA FDS management scheme, which shows there's an increase in revenue, as also mentioned by President David Pamelo. And the take-home message is that the key stocks are in a healthy state. There is no overfishing, and it's not being overfished. So next slide, sorry, that ends and concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Bradley Phillip, for the comprehensive overview on the status of stocks. I will now open up the floor for Q&A if you have any questions for Mr. Phillip. Okay, we have a question from Yap State. Yap State, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Congratulations. I used to be with you guys before, and appreciate that presentation. But my question is, we've got a 40-page document that we're going to be through in a very short time to on this summit. And in the beginning, there was no statement from the chair with regard to what's about happening in the summit. Whether to adopt the proposed policies. But the more important thing is, there is an assumption that all of us in this room are aware of the developing history of this important fisheries policies, because tuna is the most abundant of our resources, and the people in the state need to at least know from 1981 to now, capping percentage, daily vessel-based scheme, and so forth, regional arrangements. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yap State, for the question and the comment, and good to see you again, Jesse, former chairman of the MMA, Norma. I hope I captured your question right, and I won't let the scientists answer this one. I think this is more about the policy you mentioned. The intention here is hopefully that the gathering here will consider the draft National Oceanic Fisheries Investment Policy. As you will see in the outline, we're here to adopt the high-level objectives of this policy, and it is the expectation and hope and desire for the FSM and all of us here. I hope that we are going to be able to adopt that. It's been 5 years in the making with a lot of consultative processes. If anything, at the least, we hope that it will open up the avenue for national government and state governments to work collectively to align all our national laws and regulations and processes as outlined by the President in implementing, so that there is a whole of government and cohesive and inclusive participation of our colleagues also from the states, with the hope that a lot of these outcomes will deliver tangible and produce economic opportunities at the state level. You're right that given this presentation is the first one up, the status of the stocks, it is trying to put into context the policy setting that we are going to be working within. And if the statuses of all, in fact, I would say that in management of fisheries, it's easier to manage a stock that is being overfished because everybody agrees that we need to take hard measures to reduce potential overfishing and overfished states of fisheries. But when it's all in very good, healthy situations, then the development part comes in and becomes more aggressive. And through this presentation, putting sustainable fisheries up at the very forefront of our policy is critical. And so we hope that you all are aware now that we do have very healthy stocks. However, we are very competitive in terms of the development side, and that's where the policy will help us have that advantage. The BDS is actually a very scientifically based effort system. We've moved away from the capacity limits that you mentioned, where we used to have a capacity limit of 205 purse-seine vessels. It is now managed by effort limits, and there is a total allowable effort that the P&A utilizes, which is also recognized and in the WCPFC, and that's the total allowable effort for P&A of about 44,330 some odd days, and of which we have our own allocation. So the VDS is directly linked to science, and it is, as far as the effort is concerned, it is very sustainable because it is currently the TAE is set at 50% of the unfished biomass, which is a more reflective of the economic yield benefits rather than maximum sustainable yield, which would tend to produce maybe perhaps not kind of the intended outcomes in terms of management as well as economic opportunities and adding value to the fishery. So I hope that helps to clarify some of the issues about the status of the stocks, but also more about the context and the setting of the policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Just last question. The President mentioned the overfishing stuff. 1972 to 1976, they were telling us that the mortality rate of tuna was higher than the catch. Is that still the story?
Sorry, can you just repeat that again?
Thank you very much. Well, you touch base with the overfishing and these things that you said healthy stock. My question is with regard to what we know from 1972 to 1976 when I was with you guys. They were telling us that the mortality rate of tuna was still higher than the catch. Is that regional or worldwide? Mortality is tuna dying on their own. Thank you.
Thank you. I think going back that far, well, at that time we were pretty much, there was no WCPFC obviously, and most of the Pacific Island states were managing at a national level. But we all know that since this is a very highly migratory fish stocks, and with the establishment of the WCPFC here in Pohnpei, it became managed regionally, given the regional nature of the stock and the distribution throughout the Pacific. As to the question of the mortality rate, you are right. Back then in the 70s and early 80s, I think we were only, the science was telling us that only 20% of the fish stocks were being fished, and 80% of it was actually dying through natural mortality. Today, that question remains, perhaps maybe, or the answer remains largely the same, but I think in so far as managing this stock, we're probably much more better off right now. And yes, the fish stock is being hit at 50% of the unfished biomass. But again, that is because at the 50%, of the unfished biomass, it's more about an economic yield rather than sustainable yield. Because if we went for maximum sustainable yield, then I think obviously we will be looking at a far more higher mortality rate through fishing effort and not necessarily through more natural mortality. But if SPC would like to also chime in, we could perhaps maybe also get them to chime in if they understand the question. I see Stephen Hare is here as well.
Thank you very much.
Stephen?
Yeah, hi there. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So as for the 70s, that was early on in the fishery science for this tuna stock. So what might have been estimated back then isn't necessarily what we would say about the conditions now. Certainly, a larger fraction of the stock died naturally, if you will, as opposed to fishing mortality in those early days. Skipjack is a relatively short-lived species. So one of the incentives for increasing catch is that you're taking fish that would have died naturally and making them as part of your catch and benefiting economically. So usually it's right that there's a trade-off in that we set the target levels so that we leave about half of the fish in the water as would be there if there was no fishing. If we were targeting to extract the maximum possible and yet maintain the stock, we could actually take not much higher. We could certainly take higher catches than we do now. But the decision was made to balance the preservation of the stock for the future and economic concerns. And leaving about 50% in the water is a pretty good playoff between the preserving the stock and the economic benefits. So I would say that right now we are catching about half of the ones that would die anyway if we were to leave them in the water. And over the past 10 to 15 years, we've seen that stocks remain healthy. It's never gone into an overfished or overfishing state. And our projections don't see that happening as long as we maintain effort at about the level that it is now. So I'll leave it at that for the moment unless you have any other questions.
Thank you very much. The last one is our region. Is the richest tuna region in the world, or is it second, or just another richest tuna fishing ground in the world? Thank you.
I think Stephen can perhaps maybe provide an accurate, and I think Brad did, and we're roughly providing, at least for the Pacific, about, if I'm not mistaken, around 50 to 60% of the global tuna supplies that are available. But unless I can be corrected by SPC, I think those are the numbers that remain.
Okay.
Sure, I can just take a, okay, you're good at that, then we'll leave it at that. Yeah, you were quick when you said, Yuchi. About 60% of the world's tuna is caught in the WCPFC area. And as that green tower plot that Brad showed indicates, all of our stocks, despite the highest catches in the world, are also the healthiest stocks. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. So with the interest of time, we'll give the other states an opportunity for questioning. I believe we have Pohnpei State, Director Yamada. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Pohnpei has a question, and I'd like to defer to Mr. Mulvey.
Thank you, Director. First, let me just congratulate SPC, the region, for being able to maintain the stocks in such a good condition. I'm really happy to see that. I don't want to get too technical, but I think from FSM's perspective, I'm interested in the IPCC projections and the climate change impacts, because these talk to the future. As I understood, the yellowfin and skipjack are projected to move to the east, and big eye to move more to the west, right? Can you please let me know what the time scale of that is? What are the projections on those time scales that are involved, and the degree of movement and the degree of confidence in that data, in the data that we have to project that movement? Is this something that's fairly well established in the scientific community? I also had one other question, my third question, and that relates to the target reference points. those being established in the Tuna Commission, just very briefly. And the reason I ask that is, given climate change impacts, some of the stability of the inherent ecosystem are going to be relatively well maintained, that the projections we have will be sustained, or would we see some changing conditions that would really cause us to, I guess, prioritize establishing these target reference points as soon as possible to avoid future conflicts?
Thank you very much, James, for those questions and those points. We are not experts in what the IPCC is putting out. Unfortunately, Deccan is not here to help us on the IPCC discussions. But with respect to fisheries, and as in the presentation by Brad, there is, you're right, the expectation is that the time frame we're looking at is about by 2050. A lot of this distribution will shift to the east. Perhaps maybe for the longer term, I think given the science of climate change and the impact it has on fisheries is still developing as we talk. There has been projections also by SPC through a lot of its models that we are expecting a lot of this fishery largely to be farther east within the next 90 years. In other words, the distribution of skipjack and big eye will be significantly diminished in terms of availability in our EEZ. So the shift will be farther east. I think there's still quite a lot of work to be engaged with the SPC and the global scientists. There are a lot of other aspects of climate change as well. Obviously, salinity is going to be one, oxygen availability, and I think that has a lot of impact on the albacore fishery. But bringing it back to the other question of the target reference points, through the WCPFC, negotiating on targeted reference points have always been very complex and difficult negotiations. But for the P&A, we have already established through the vessel day scheme, as far as the P&A waters is concerned, that we have set a target reference point of 50% of the unfished biomass. In terms of the more regional target reference point for big eye, yellowfin, and skipjack, there has been interim target reference points for all key stocks, but particularly for skipjack, that has also now, I understand, has expired, and there are no current target reference points for any of the stocks. That is an ongoing discussion right now as we talk. With the development of a new tropical tuna measure to replace the current tropical tuna measure that is in place in the region. So in terms of stability and ecosystems, I think the science is continuing to evolve and develop, and obviously these are all major concerns. For me particularly, the impact of climate change, I think the Pacific Island leaders have already taken the first step, and that is to ensure that in the first place the impact of climate change and sea level rise on our maritime boundaries remain secure due to the impact of human interventions. Our maritime boundaries and the baselines might be affected, and so we're hoping for some global or international legal framework to be established that puts those maritime boundaries on a more permanent basis and not subject to change because sea level rise is moving the baselines. In addition to that, we hope that the total allowable effort, which is based on historical fishing effort in the Pacific, remains a commodity or an asset of the countries that are in the P&A. In other words, if the fish moves east, we still retain the rights to that allocation under the WCPFC, and people still need to buy that allocation from us to fish it, even if it's in the east. And one of those areas is the high seas, which is another area of discussion that's creating a lot of, I think, high blood pressure, particularly among the distant water fishing countries who feel that the high seas should remain high seas and not subject to other coastal states' ownership of the total allowable effort. But these are things that are really subject to international norms and legal instruments and so forth. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Again, with the interest of time, we will now move on to the next presentation. But before we do that, let us give Mr. Philip a round of applause for his presentation. Okay, for the next presentation, it will be on current onshore state development. Now that we know that the stocks are healthy, let us examine the various development in this sector to know the stages on where they are. The next presentation will inform us about that, and it will be presented by the Senior Fisheries Economist of Norma, Ms. Angelina Tretnoff.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. It's still morning. I think we're past morning. I apologize. So, my respects to you all. My name is Angelina Tretnoff. Today I'll be presenting on our current onshore state development. So this is a... Next slide, please. So this is a brief outline of what I'll be presenting on, and I'll go over the agencies, services, employment, transshipment, and what it means for FSM's future. Next slide, please. So with this presentation, I hope to tie in all the 4 states of the FSM, Chuk, Koshrai, Pohnpei, Yap, and their onshore development, and what it means for the states and this fisheries investment policy. Next slide, please. We have a total of 6 domestic partners. Our Pohnpei-based domestic partners are, of course, CFC, that's Caroline Fisheries Corporation, City Pro, Liancheng, NFC, that's National Fisheries Corporation. Our Koshrai-based domestic partner, Dayang, and with our Yap-based domestic partners, Diving Seagull, or DSI. Next slide, please. The services that these domestic companies provide are listed as is: fishing bases, shipyard facilities, processing plants, airmail and parcel delivery services, international ocean freight shipping services, solar power systems, battery energy storage system, power system, loining plants, facilities. Basically, these show how extensive and different the varieties of services that our FSM domestic partners provide. It's more than just fishing. They have provided services that the islands need throughout their onshore developments. Next, I'll be going over the employment. So these companies employ a total of 544 people. Of those 544, 369, which is 68%, are locals. 175 of them are expats. That's 32%. Of the locals, 60 of them are women. 56% of women of the locals. Next, I'll be going over the total transshipment, unloading in FSM. Looking back at the data from 2017 to 2021, the past 5 years, we can see that the highest transshipment data we have is 1,553. That was back in 2018. If we look further on the chart on the bottom, we can see by ports that Pohnpei continues to be the most attractive port among all FSM ports, followed by Koshrai, then Yap. Chuk has only one unloading record in 2018, and that is an FSM longliner, Sengafa 719. Okay, next slide, please. The next data I will be showcasing is the total transshipment unloading by gear and ports for the same years, the past 5 years. If we look at by gear, the Persane fleet has always been the dominant gear by unloading and transshipments in all FSM ports. Only Pohnpei and Fishery have records of Persane and Longliners unloading and transshipping from 2017 to 2021. YAP has only one Persane transshipment record in 2019 and is a Nauru Persane Narrow Star. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip my next part, so next slide. So next I'm just going to be going over each of the domestic partners and what they have for their plans for expansion. So CFC has plans for shoreside facility expansion and increased warehouse space. They want to establish a machine shop to expand vessel repair services. Also, they have plans of dock expansion, but it has been delayed by COVID. They also have a hydro farm in the works, hydroponic farm on Pohnpei that they are hoping to establish. Next slide, please. Next, we have City Pro. So City Pro's project is CASEL. That's the Caprice Solar Energy Limited. The top photo on the right is the CASEL solar PV power system. And after installation has completed, we can see what it looks like at the bottom right corner. The other three photos are from CASEL's battery energy storage system, or BESS, after installation. Solar power system specification provides 2.5 megawatts and BESS specifications of 2.77. Due to COVID, City Pro has not been able to deliver the high voltage that they anticipated. Restrictions of their Taiwanese technicians from entering the FSM has been the main reason they can't deliver this power. It must be done locally and can't be done by remote control. This is only one of the many impacts of COVID on their operations. Next slide, please. Next, I'll be going over Dayang. Dayang is stationed in Fishery. We can see that their master plan up on the screen from 2021 to 2025. They have plans for container transshipment, net repair, frozen loin processing plant, shipyard repair, pre-cooked loin plant, pier expansion, solar power plant. Next, I'll be going over the Liancheng's expansion or developments. So Liancheng wants to restart processing facilities for fresh Longline processing operation. They also want to upgrade their Fishery shipyard. They also have plans to lease the YFTI in Yap for operating fresh Longline. There's also interest in facilities for Chuk State. We can look at the bottom left picture. We can see renovation. This is where they want to do, using their building, the EDA building, to provide cold storage facilities with about 800 metric ton capacity. And they also want to restart PFC processing facilities for fresh Longline processing operations. The top two pictures, we can see that they've been working on upgrades towards their Fishery shipyard. Then the bottom corner picture, we can see that planning to lease, with regards to planning to lease their YFTI, that is the location in Yap. And again, they also have interest in securing a transshipment facility in Chuk. So due to COVID-19 pandemic, the FSM closed its borders and imposed travel restrictions, and both vessels and base management staffs were not allowed into the FSM. This has caused major problems in their operations in FSM, replacement of crew and staff and cannot travel to FSM. So what does this all mean? Next, we need to build up national capacity in assessing all these investments, developing fisheries indicators to support government decision-making, identifying critical investments to improve facilities in all 4 ports, building state and national capacity for negotiating investment proposals, states to identify suitable land for potential investors to access, and also identifying infrastructure that needs to support onshore investments. Thank you, and that concludes.
Followed by Mr. Sue, who will present on the Longline fishery. So may I call upon Mr. Marco Camper for the per se presentation.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to pay my respects to all the state leaders and all the delegates in attendance. Let me see if I can share my screen.
Marco, stand by. We'll make you also host.
Apologies, it's the first time I've tried to do this.
Okay, you're now co-host, so you should be able to share. I think, right?
Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a presentation for the FSM National Fishery Investment Policy. First of all, our first slide, I'd like to mention that from the industry perspective, NOFA feels that we feel that we should have ensured conducive business and investment environment for genuine domestic foreign interest for effective partnerships. There had been a lot of some of our industry members, companies in our industry recently had a lot of issues with some litigation with the Department of Justice and the national government. So recent litigations against domestically based vessels has caused panic amongst domestic and foreign vessel operators to enter and or do business in FSM. Such measures are counterproductive for the development, especially in such cases involving minor infractions. What we'd like to inform is that each vessel that comes into a FSM port, usually in the per seine business, brings in between $20,000 to $40,000 to the economy in terms of port costs, payments, provisioning, services, which is a big factor, and it's a big income revenue for the FSM and all of its port states. We feel that it's best to find a common ground rather than pursue attraction of vessel operators to FSM ports, rather than frighten the vessels away through such litigation measures. Previous studies that CFC had done, collaborations with other companies to build onshore processing. What we came about was ways of implementing how to facilitate onshore processing, canning factories or loining factories for per seine caught tuna in FSM states. Would need government assistance, would be required, possibly through low interest rate loans, allowing foreign workforce to enter for employment in processing plants. FSM local workforce has been migrating to the U.S. for better opportunities tied with COPA and higher wages. We have directly been experiencing this in our company as well, as we've lost over the years a lot of our own local workforce that have been migrating to the U.S. for employment with different companies that have come to recruit people from the FSM. For onshore processing to be competitive against other large processors in the regions such as Thailand and Philippines, a larger pool of human resources is required willing to work for lower wages in order to be competitive in the market. That is just the reality that we see after we conduct a feasibility study in this type of industry. Government concessions. The domestic fishing industry needs government assistance in terms of concessions granted. This is especially true during various lingering periods of below operational cost tuna market prices. So we all know tuna is a very volatile market, and it's heavily manipulated now more by the larger processors in Thailand and the brand owners, which are now operated by large traders and large processors based in Asia. They tend to have more control on the manipulation of the tuna market prices rather than where it was previously more in favor for fishing companies and fishermen. The establishment of a competent authority will help to add value to our tuna exports. I know this is all in the pipeline for the FSM, and it's currently being worked on. This will be a major milestone to achieve for FSM once we are able to establish the authority to help us export our tuna products to Europe. Fuel tax exemption for domestic fleets would allow for competitive local sourcing for vessels to bunker and port, ultimately aggregating to the local economic benefits. So if vessels are able to get some tax exemption, it would be a lot more beneficial for vessels to bunker vessels while they're calling port in Ponape for provisioning, transshipment, and other services that they require, instead of having to bunker the ships outside in the high seas or other exclusive economic zones. Effects of climate change. What we noticed in terms of the industry, the per seine industry, the effects of climate change on the migration of tuna species and its possible effects for the future of the FSM. We do notice a trend is that the tuna species migrating further east as the years go by that could negatively affect the FSM's PAE. Reduction of fishing effort in FSM's exclusive economic zones has been noticed over the years for our fleet, for CFC, as we've noticed, and our captains have been moving further east over the years to fish in eastern areas, Eastern Exclusive Economic Zone P&A countries, or in the Eastern High Seas area with a more lucrative fishing ground. Government assistance may be required for opening discussions with IATTC for FSM fleets to fish beyond the deadly CPFC convention area. And there's a lot of studies being done now, especially that we can all see on news articles that, by 2050, there's an expectation that through the effects of climate change, that tuna species, there might be a reduction of 20% of tuna species in the EEZs of the P&A countries, because the climate change is, according to science, moving the warmer waters further east, and this will positively affect more of the countries emitting the greenhouse effects, such as the US fleets that tend to fish in the IATTC area, as well as the WCPFC area. So this is something to think about over the years as we move forward in building infrastructure in the FSM in the fisheries sector. COVID-19 issues. A lot of issues have been ongoing now with the pandemic since the beginning, and last year a lot of crew mental health issues have become an ongoing issue as crews are unable to disembark the vessels at any port. Proper medical procedures are missing or have not been properly addressed when crew members get ill or injured with the current pandemic protocols. Many problems due to high infection rates at processing hubs such as Thailand, where production has been cut by as much as 15%, causing a decrease in demand for raw material and lowering of tuna raw material prices. Vessels maintenance projects, shipyard schedules, and vessel upgrade projects have fallen behind schedule due to the pandemic. Costs of fishing operations have increased substantially. Shipping costs are at all-time highs. Provisions have increased in cost substantially due to large inflation. And fuel prices have been continuously increasing. Conclusion, FSM should focus on more infrastructure development to generate more economic return, considering the climate change scenario and what the future might hold. Vessels with minor infractions should be handled with administrative penalties rather than being subjected to scrutinous litigation in order to attract more business to the islands, rather than scare away domestic partners and potential foreign investors and vessels calling FSM ports inclusively. Clear and transparent partnerships should be established to determine a win-win scenario for all parties involved, and the promotion of new generation of FSM citizens in the fishing industry for higher education in the maritime sector. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Camper, for the comprehensive presentation. May we have Mr. Hilo Sue for the next presentation on Longline.
Okay, yeah, let me just try to put my share screen on the phone just a minute. Okay. Okay. Hi, good morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank Nova for giving them the opportunity to do the presentation during this summit on the opportunity and challenge of FSM fishing industry, particularly on the Longline fishery. We have outlined the presentation as the PowerPoint that shown on the screen. We instructed to limit it to less than 10 minutes, so I will go through this as fast as I can. Okay, to start, let me just do a brief introduction of the entity. Many of you may know us as Longline. We have been doing business, or was founded in 1965. We started doing a business in Micronesia since 1970 and started fishing in 1994. Today we're the only one-stop seafood provider with full range of service. Our group supply chain, including pre-fishing base, ship repair dock, logistics, processing, and marketing. Okay, here's a detail of our supply chain. We have our own fleet plus agent fleet to support our operation. We have fishing base in different parts of the Pacific, shipyard in China and FSM, and logistics support of Asia Pacific, CPSI, and Mariana Express Line. We have processing plant in Montreal, Panama, and in China, and then we also have marketing facility around the world. Here's a general map of our operation in the Central Western Pacific. We have 8 fishery bays and 3 processing plants in the shipyard. We have all 69 on Longline boat plus 50 plus agent boat. We hope we can get more. Right now we have operation FSM. We got Coast Guard and Panama Bay. We temporarily cease yacht right now due to the pandemic, and also we are trying to secure a place in yacht to renovate our base. And we provide over 200 local employment for all our operation in FSM. We have 2 logistics support bases, both in Guam and Hawaii, and we also have 2 strategic partners to support both in air and sea freight, Asia Pacific Airlines, Mariana Express Line, and CPSI. Okay, here's a picture of our Panama Bay operation. We started the Panama Bay PFC operation since 2006. And for the next 10 years was doing pretty good, and until 2015 and 16, then there's some issues, so forced us to stop. And now we want to start again, but unfortunately, in the beginning of 2020, we got hit by the pandemic, so everything kind of hold right now. So we concentrate on the frozen operation in Panama Bay. Next, we have Coast Guard. Coast Guard, we do a lot of container transit, and actually, Coast Guard is doing pretty good, I would say, for this year. Year to date, as of August, we have exported almost 26,000 metric tons. That's about 1,000 containers out of Coast Guard. I think that's a very, very big volume. We should be commended for it. And, there's a lot of economic contribution if we benefit if we can have the volume such as what we did in Coast Guard, and we can use this as a model for our other base. I mean, imagine from port charge, tax, employment, with this volume, you can really benefit FSM a lot. We can get the vessel transit import to the onshore facility. I mean, for example, on the stevedore company, we are paying $5.10 a metric ton for service, and we pay $4.25 a ton for port service, plus port charge, docking fee. That's all pretty tremendous income for Coast Guard company. Here's our shipyard operation. We have invested about $1 million of renovation parts in there, but unfortunately not able to do so due to the travel restriction. But we will start as soon as things can be normalized. Fish farming, this is the future of fishery. The picture on the left is a trial operation we did to raising suma tuna in Onshore Coast Guard, in Panama Bay, back in about 2 years ago. But we wish to continue that one. The picture on the right, that shows what it can be in, say, Japan. Like, you can have a lot of aquaculture, fish farming project. And, well, congratulations to FSM with Norma and Jensen's effort. We were able to get yellowfin tuna and big-eye tuna to be MSC certified. since 2018 and 2019. Okay, now I'll go to the main topic. Current challenge of the Longline fishery. Okay, historically, we have very low catch lately. Average daily catch per vessel of Longline went from the high of more than 1,000 kilo in 2013 to only about 300 some kilo in 2021 so far. That's a decrease of more than 72%. Another factor is raising costs and operation of the current market condition is not good too. Raising cost of fuel supply for vessel operations, raising freight costs to export fish from FSM. The ocean freight went up at least 30% since 2019. Actually, that's still a very optimistic increase because our volume, we were able to negotiate with Mariana Express Line with a volume to keep the freight low or manageable. Some part of the world, the rate already went up more than 100%. That's cost of commodity and freight. It went up tremendously. So what this brings is a fish sale. It's really difficult for the vessel operation to even cover the expense, but we have to find ways to support the fleet. Effect of the COVID pandemic, markets have covered a lot, so basically it's the same, vessel not able to do the normal crew change and replacement due to travel restrictions. So for some vessel, to either be FSM or stop operation. So that's a problem there. Also, the mental issue of crew as Marcos entered, many crew have resigned. And we even have, due to the negative price, we even have to charter a flight to Panama and Coast Guard just to get the crew back home. Then our renovations not able to complete, supporting staff not able to come to FSM. So the 14-day quarantine is really causing problem for fresh operation. That's why we don't really do much in yard and Panama right now, because fish need to be kept fresh to export by air. And also the fishing processing facility not able to complete required inspection and certification. Now the most important, in my opinion, all of the fishery onshore development and investment is a fishing boat. We start the fishing boat to support, so there is no economic activity for the onshore. So what we really need, we need to find some way to create a good operation environment to attract more vessels to come to FSM. Here's a graph that's showing the historical catch for the past 10 years on daily catch of the Longline 3. As you can see, from the high of 2013 to this year, average our Longline for only catching just a little bit over 300 kilo, and that that's difficult. Yeah. The advantage of Longline operation in FSM, well, FSM have a large fishing ground within EEZ, a closed Asia market, and the trading and commodity use currency is in US dollar, which is an advantage. The disadvantage is high cost of local supply and provision for the vessel, and insufficient trade service and high cost to support the fishery industry. And that is a difficulty. That's why we started with our partner and established Asian Pacific Airline and the Mariana Express Line just to provide the service for the export of the fish, which indirectly, I think, also benefit FSM. The Asian Pacific Airline bring in all the US mail for the FSM and also the needed cargo, either from Guam or Hawaii to FSM, and then also keep the ocean freight at the minimize increased level and also more frequency of cargo vessel calling FSM port. Also, FSM, Marco point out, is not enough available experienced labor force to support the field of fishery operation. Over enforcement and penalty on fishing vessels manual infraction. This is very concerning. Also dissuade more vessels who wanted to operate in the FSM, and that's Vincent's concern of how to get more people to operate in the FSM. And generally, not too much support in fishing and industry or support facility, and that's what we need to work on and build. What Vincent on Longline industry need for FSM support, provide incentive and concession for domestic-based fleet, give them a good operation environment, treat them right, and they will come. And recruit more fishing vessels to operate FSM. So we are working to develop partnership with NORMA to achieve this goal. And one of the things is we are partnered with NORMA is right now Vincent is doing his best to recruit more agent boats to operate FSM. But one of the point there is very risky for Vincent is as how the agreement is written right now. But Vincent has to be responsible for all the vessels, responsible for all the vessels that they bring to FSM as an agent boat. I don't think any company in the world can take that kind of risk. That any single boat will try to help FSM to recruit into operating FSM, and we have to responsible for anything that is a major risk. Now we also propose to encourage more fishing vessels licensed with FSM to offload the catch in the FSM port. By FSM port, I'm saying supporting the onshore facility, not just to the carrier vessel or anchorage. So I don't know, my proposal is that maybe we can require certain percentage of catch to be offloaded to FSM onshore facility to increase the economic activity and onshore employment. Also, we propose to allow a vessel not operating within FSM EEZ offloaded catch FSM port. There's another vessel fishing just at high sea. I'm talking Longline wise, just outside FSM or not far from FSM. If we can allow those vessels to come to FSM offload the catch, either by carrier or fishing vessel by itself, then that can tremendously increase the economic activity of the onshore facility and investment. And provide necessary documents to export fish and fish products from FSM. To establish FSM national and state policy of aquaculture and fish farming operation. You know, when we do the trial of 2018, there's not a lot of policy concerning this, but it's just a trial. But we have a set policy that we can pursue in this direction. And also, I believe there's some government grant that we can try to seek jointly to support the research and development of the project. And provide incentive for onshore fishery development and investment. There's a couple of creative ways that I can suggest, because right now what Vincent's doing is, first we have to go into a stage in FSM, we have to rent the space, and then while paying the rent, then we start renovation, and then put in millions of dollars investment to get a facility up and running. I mean, for an investor and operator, that's a lot of upfront cash you need to put up. So maybe to give some incentive, as what we did in other parts of the world. I mean, I can suggest maybe FSM can say, or states can say, well, here's the all existing facility of land. Now we're going to give you maybe a discount rate or waiver of rent for like say 3-4 years for you to build it up, but you promise to invest certain amount into the facility. Then the second phase is you start to pay 50%, 60% of the rent, and then when the operation is fully operational, then you go to 100% in rent. It's just a suggestion as an incentive to attract more onshore development. Also provide more training for FSM citizens interested in the field of fishery to increase local employment opportunity. You know, we can collaborate with CPON and other means to provide the training course, establish local recruitment agency to provide available labor force needs, provide trained local crew for the fishing boat or for the processing plant need. I mean, the key word is localization. If we can find a suitable labor force locally, there's no need for us to seek crew or supporting staff for overseas, because we want to localization. That's win-win situation for FSM and investor. Expanding the dock, which is quite important because the dock space is actually to expand the onshore facilities, not enough to accommodate the fishery. For example, on the coastline, when a cargo boat comes in, all the fishing boats stop operation and go to our anchorage for a couple of days. When the cargo vessel left, then they come in to operate. That really slow down the operation. We can have much more volume if we can have more dock, especially just for fishing boat or Longline boat. Same thing with Pana Bay. Although they have a designated area for fishing vessel, but sometimes like the Caroline voyage or something comes in, that take out half the dock, so not enough to support. Provide a favorable business and fishery operation environment, encourage fishery policy and regulatory reform to improve efficiency, and they attract more fishing vessels. Improve enforcement climate and transparency in penalty, using the expanded and established administration penalty and citation system for law enforcement purpose to avoid court. This is a real concern for a lot of folks that wanted to operate in FSM. I mean, we were talking about a small infraction that are getting fined hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, we just like the operator cannot understand this. When the vessel are catching hundreds of tons of fish and brought in for offloading or operating FSM, misrecording of 2 or 3 fish, I really don't believe it's a serious violation and can be fined up to a couple $100,000. Besides, our Longline fishery that operate FSM EEZ that offload the catch 100% in FSM port, and when they're offloading the fish, NOMA send their staff to there count the fish, each one by one and by weight. They have all the record, so there's no reason for the captain who wanted to hide anything. I mean, misrecorded 1 or 2 fish, I think that's human error, that's incredible. So, you know, we have vessels that misrecorded 1 or 2 moonfish, and we had to settle for $500,000. I mean, that is really scare away a lot of vessels. So really, I mean, as I said, already have an administration penalty and citation system, but we're not using it fully as what the purpose is. So I hope we can improve on that in order to attract more vessels. Expedite the certificate of EU competent authority with import duty-free treatment EU that will open a whole lot of additional market for fish export. common goal or policy is invest and open onshore fishery in all 4 states of FSM, expand fish processing plant and capacity, provide fish value-added service for the fishery vessel operation, in support of shore-based commercial development and employment, mobile aquaculture and fish farming project in FSM. This is our future of the sustainability of the fishery to maintain and enhance long-term fishery resource sustainability. To establish FSM, that's our goal as a major tuna transport port in the West Central Central Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sue. So, now that you've heard some of the challenges and opportunities posed by the, or presented by the representatives from our domestic fishing industry, I will now open up the floor for Q&A for the past 3 presentations. Okay, we have a question by Yap. Please go ahead, Yap State.
Thank you very much, and thanks for presenting practically support our collective efforts, your collective efforts, everybody's collective efforts, PNA collective efforts, to increase our share of the total value of tuna fish caught in this region and landed in the nation's water fishing nations. Before I was informed, maybe not correctly, but we were getting up to less than 5% or all these very important schemes like the special day scheme. Has that percentage increased or decreased? The percentage of the value of the total tuna taken out from this region and landed in the distant water fishing nations. Thank you.
Thanks, Jesse, again for the question that you posed, and might be a difficult one to answer right now, but I'll make an attempt at it. And thanks for the question. As far as the rate of return on the value of the fishing that's occurring within our waters, I think as presented earlier and as pointed out in the President's statement, the introduction of the vessel day scheme has increased the value of our fisheries significantly. On a more regional scale, Pacific Island countries were generating about $60 million annually collectively. With the introduction of the VDS, which are largely implemented by the parties to the NARO agreement, plus Tokelau, of course, that has increased significantly from $60 million to over $500 million that are now being paid for rights to access the fishery. The field has become somewhat more limited in respect of the allowable effort, but the number of vessels that are participating in the VDS have increased, and it's increased in respect of the fact that the competition for securing days is very competitive, and so the more vessels that participate, obviously the value goes up, and therefore the access the countries, particularly for the FSM, which for information charges the highest value per day compared to other PNA members. Then there are other aspects that come into play. There are trading mechanisms that add value, as well as if you want to incorporate the FSM arrangement as an arrangement which provides for preferential access by domestic fleets or home party vessels, that is another added value to this to the fishery. And what you capture through the FSM rate is very different from the access fees that we're talking about. it's intended to provide other economic opportunities and support domestic vessels. So in terms of valuation, you might want to have a much more broader assessment, and I think that's something that we may want to obviously look in and see how we can quantify more the broader benefits that our parties are generating. So in terms of the increasing the value for onshore processing, I think that's exactly the direction that this policy setting is expected to do. I think we have maximized the value of our rent per day, and as I said, we are charging the highest in the region in terms of value per day, and that's largely because of the domestic fleets, the pull associated with the domestic fleets and the days that they take up, which is about roughly half of our PA. So there are two competitive pools, the foreign and the domestic, and we hope that by leveraging the vessel day scheme with domestic fleets to, rather than looking for value in terms of dollars, we're looking for value in terms of economic opportunities and onshore investments and creating jobs and processing and exports, which I think what a lot of our industry has been advocating. One thing that I think we should be very take note of is the fact that while we look at rent as an opportunity to generate cash, if you look at the presentation by the fisheries economists and also the presentations by Lian Cheng and NOFA, there are chains associated with their fishing business. There are other businesses that provide that support, and there are opportunities that are generated from their existence, and so one must need to look at, we need to do a lot more quantification of all these activities and what do they really mean in terms of your economy. Just don't look at it from a licensing perspective, but look at it, what other businesses do they support and create through their presence in the FSM. And I don't know, about 500 people employed in this industry, where almost 400 are locals, is quite a number of employment opportunities. But we do need to do better assessments in terms of quantifying what those benefits really mean. The main message I'm getting from the industry is investments. Investments in infrastructure means increasing opportunities, and so that's something we hope the policy will help generate and guide us all as well. Thank you, at state and national levels.
Thank you, Director. Any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
I understand that all the states are looking out for economic opportunity. While looking at the graphs that you guys provide us today, I see Pompey, Chu, Kenya. They all have a base partner. And that employment that you're talking about, which is about 400 for our locals, excluding Chu. I know there is some interest in doing the same business in Chu. But my question is, how long are we going to wait? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Governor, and that's a very good question, a difficult question, but I think hopefully not too long after we get this policy adopted. This policy is supposed to generate, a level playing field for all the states. I think one thing that was mentioned is also a partnership that we're working with Lian Cheng, a more longer-term relationship rather than annual relationship, is to look at forward planning, and I think Chuk is a big part of that program of revitalizing the Longline industry in Chuk State again. So I hope that it won't be too long before we can get started on reforming and aligning a lot of our national and state goals in terms of trying to reinvigorate longline fishing as well as per se in all four states, but particularly in Chuk, where we have seen almost very little activity as far as fisheries is concerned. So I hope that will stimulate some discussions among partners about also directing where the competition is for among the 4 states in terms of attracting that foreign investment will depend largely as well on the state's ability or response to investment needs and requirements. So I hope that we can get to that kind of level of discussion when the policies are implemented.
Another follow-up question, please. Thank you, Director. My next question is, my next comment. I'm hoping and looking forward for that day that discussion will come to Chuk for that purposes, to at least have some base partners or any participation to realize that opportunities for our force, our labor force. Hopefully, by doing that, that 400 number of employees will increase by at least 100 if we ever come to realize that interest that you guys mentioned before. My next question is relating to the transshipment and unloading in FSM from 2017 to 21. I've noticed that the numbers dropped in 2021, and one of the major factors to this is the climate change. Now, it drops from about 1,200 to 303. That's a drastic decline. Are there other major factors in place of climate change? Because in 2020, I understand climate change continues to get worse. So with that drastic change, I wonder if there is any other factors in the decline. Thank you.
Thank you, and let me try to answer the last question first. The decline, I think, is also largely associated with the COVID-19, where restrictions, as pointed out by Hilo, has created significant challenges for the Longline fishery as far as, well, first of all, the shutdown in Guam resulted in almost no flights coming out of Guam back to Japan, which means those are the flights that our tuna fills up the belly to fly back.
Sustainability,
You might want to mute Chuk's. The other issue is really in terms of longliners do have a lot of foreign workers, and there's a requirement for a lot of crew changes, and so that has an impact as well on their ability to rotate their crew. But I think it's more about logistics, getting vessels to be able to unload and get it to Guam, where then they're transshipped on to carriers to Japan, which is the largest market for fresh tuna. And that has been restricted by COVID-19. In terms of transshipment basis and Chuk in particular, I think the long-term partnership, Mr. Sue mentioned about more vessels transshipping in our ports. I think FSM is moving towards full domestication of our longline fishery, where 100% of the vessels that we license must unload their catch in the FSM EEZ. However, to implement such a domestication policy, we do need to make sure that all 4 states have the infrastructure and capacity to handle that kind of policy to be implemented. In other words, all vessels fishing and in our EEZ, transshipping in all 4 ports, there is an air freight system or a logistics system that supports such transshipment volumes, as well as the markets to support it. And at the moment, I think as far as the longline fishery is concerned, Lian Cheng is, as they presented in their presentation, they have that full vertically integrated systems in place to support the longline. Lian Cheng is actually just a transportation company, but it's the fishing that supports across the board all those services. So there is definitely an opportunity for all 4 states to capitalize on that existence of the companies across the FSM. But we do need to build up infrastructure and investments in our longline basis. That policy then can be implemented, and I think it's creating a win-win partnership with Lian Cheng. Labor was identified, and I think this is where we are actually engaging with the College of Micronesia to start looking at programs that will feed into a lot of the onshore processing facilities, not just on the line, but also in offices, in the, the vocational aspects of it. The Yang Seafoods has said that in order for them to operate their operations in Kosrae, they need a lot of, not just people on the line, but across the whole plant, because they don't want to bring expensive foreign crew or workers. They want to hire locals. So that's one area that I think the college has to play a major role in this process. There was mention of the out-migration of crew or Micronesians, and that certainly has an impact on the labor force. So we need to think about the labor question brought to us on the labor import. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director. I think...
One last question. Just one more question. With regards to the VDS, what's the progress? Are we on a sold out annually every year, or are we looking for partners? Just a progress on that.
All right, thank you, Governor. And I think for the VDS, I can say that FSM is doing a lot more better than a lot of the other PNA members in selling its days. And there are good reasons for that, in my view. First of all, it's our strategic geographical location. We are an EEZ that expands from the east to the west and can cover almost the entire continental United States. I think, as presented in the science part, there's the El Nino, La Nina conditions that occur every 3 years. Even during El Nino conditions, FSM still is a major fishing ground, and that is because of the expansion of our EEZ to the east. But more importantly, all the major ports are north of FSM EEZ, northwest, and so therefore all these vessels must go through the FSM EEZ. That's another advantage, that we actually have bilaterals with almost every single distant water fishing country, because they have to come through our zone anyways. And so I don't know of a captain who wants to come through the FSM EEZ, see fish, but because they don't have a license or a fishing day, they have to bypass that and go somewhere else. I think for FSM as well, transshipment ports become a major part of our benefit to fishing fleets, and we are also providing all the necessary support in terms of catch documentations and for fishing vessels to go. So the challenge, I think, for us right now is a diminishing demand for our days. The luxuries of where the vessel scheme was in high demand by many fleets. The concern we have now is the complete demise and decline of the United States fleet, which used to be 50 boats. They're now down to about 13 boats. And that 13 boats does not fish in the FSM EEZ because they're attached to the Pango plant. So where we were selling quite a significant number of days to the US fleet, that market now is gone, in my view, and we need to find new customers to maintain that competitiveness of our PAE among distant water fishing fleets. Our domestic fleet, as I said, consumes 50%, and even within this 50%, we are creating a competitive pool among those who are flagged and based and providing economic opportunities to us. Even within that group, they have to be competitive. The lowest performer will find it very challenging to come into to maintain their level of allocations. But again, this construction of our domestic fleet is very challenging. I've mentioned you have this, foreign-owned companies, and you have domestic-based joint ventures with the NFC, the Tayo Micronesia, and the COOS. But you also have pure Micronesian-owned companies such as the Diving Seagull, and of course you have the Caroline Fisheries Corporation, which is a joint venture with Pohnpei State. So it's very complex, but very challenging for the PDS. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director. We'll move on to the next question. I believe it's Pohnpei State.
Thank you, Chair. I think
I just want to ask a very simple question, being a statesperson. I think we all get excited when we hear about, $70 million of fisheries revenue. And we know that we really don't see much of that at the state level. And what we look forward to in this onshore development, which does bring in some revenue to the state. So my question is, can you quantify for me how much exactly does Pohnpei State benefit from onshore development or any fisheries activities in Pohnpei State? I mean, that's one question. My second question is, how much more will this investment policy increase in terms of benefit for the state of Pohnpei? And the reason why I ask these questions is because we can't seem to see much of it in our economy right now. In terms of concessions, you guys give concessions to the fishing boats, and I'll use one example. When you give concession or allow fishing companies to do activities that actually take away the livelihoods of locals, just like farming and stuff, it sort of makes me worry that we are not actually helping improve the lives of the people of Pohnpei in those areas. I'm thinking in terms of if we take those resources and actually help those local farmers in improving farming activities so that they could contribute to the economy of Pohnpei, and I think that would be more beneficial to the state of Pohnpei. And the other thing is, in light of all of these activities that goes on in the state of Pohnpei, we still see a lot of our young people leaving Pohnpei. And that's one of the reasons why I said that we don't seem to see any of this as a benefit to the state of Pohnpei. Thank you.
I was hoping R&D would be able to respond to that, but thank you very much, Senator Movic, for that question. And let me just say that fisheries is one component of our economic sector, and as far as oceanic fisheries is concerned, we are making every effort we can to generate more economic benefits to the FSM. And so our party allowable effort is about 7,800 days. If we remove the domestic industry, I think what you will see is you will see that the value of your days will go down. And that's because you have over allocated from your PA to the FSM, and the demand is not there. So the domestic fleet represents a demand sector that we provide those kind of concessions to them, but not in the sense of the cash, but more trying to provide the concessions, the discounts the president used to incentivize them to generate other types of benefits. That's cash not going to the treasury, but it's creating business opportunities at the state level. There are these onshore investments. I think we need to look at it from where is it really creating difficulties for each individual state. I think each individual state will need to do some level of assessments at the state level, and I think Pohnpei will stand out as a major benefiter of the fishing industry because they're all located here. Fishery is now in the position of benefiting significantly from the onshore processing facility there, but thanks to COVID-19, it's not operational. Personally, I went to Fishery just to find out whether they had the labor force, and for Fishery to think about how they're going to address the labor issue once we generate that competent authority and they can actually start processing. And it's a major concern for, I think, Fishery as well as for the FSM that that plant is at risk that labor might be a major constraint now. We've always said that people leave the FSM because, who wants to work in a plant at $35, $75 an hour or $2 when you can jump the plane and go to Guam and work at McDonald's and get $12 an hour. This is not exactly the best performing sector. It's hard work but low pay because it's in the islands. But for these investors to also come in, they also need to understand that the global market and transportation logistics here at the FSM is very difficult to operate. But in order for them to actually be incentivized to invest, we have to also work in partnership with them and see how we can generate those kinds of interest and investments in the FSM. So Norma doesn't hold the answer to all these difficult questions. It's really now a question of the policy and how we can work together as partners in this between the FSM and the state. Because for the most part, you have the land, you have the labor, you have the businesses, and you have the ports. It is a question of what are the policies that we will have to agree on and how we're going to implement it, where whatever national government concessions is being granted and whatever state concessions are being granted, if you want these investors to come to your state and compete with your other states. And by the way, FSM is competing with Palau, with Marshalls, with Nauru, with Kiribati, with PNG, for the same people we're trying to bring here to create economic opportunities. So it's a very competitive environment, but we don't have the advantage because we are small islands in the Pacific, with very distant from markets, very little labor force, very little resources to provide. So, I think that's something that we all need to work together and fix, because we agree it's not produced the type of results you want, but there are other reasons other than the VDS and the concessions. Some mentioned enforcement, some mentioned unfriendly environment, confusions at the state level about how to access land, decision-making process. So I think this policy, I hope, will resolve that and align all our thinking around the best approach. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. I believe we can entertain one more question. We have Yap State that raised their hand, if they're still.
Received our directive because I have some comments.
Okay, we'll go to Koshrai if Yap does not have any question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know I will be standing in between lunch and you folks, so my intervention will be very quick. It is actually a friendly suggestion. And my suggestion is that before we break for lunch, if the three of you up there can maybe put forth some lesson learned from the four presentation, maybe with a few to warm us up to the next theme of the discussion, the next topic this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gerson. I believe everybody is ready for lunch. Just so, if you guys have any other question, please note that we will be sharing all the presentation PowerPoints for your information. And that includes the vessel day scheme. It will be distributed as a taken as read. However, if there's any comments on that, we can take it up after the break. So before we go on break, may I kindly ask Director Yamada to bless our food.
Thank you. Let us all bow in a word of prayer. Lord, you tell us that man does not live by bread alone, but by the very word that proceeds from the mouth of God. And so in acknowledgement of that, we bow in prayer asking Father, well, first of all, in worship, thanking you for your many blessings upon us, and for the continued success of this meeting. And as we break, Lord, to enjoy and share what's been prepared for us today, for the nourishment of our body, we pray, Father, that you bless our food to our strength, O Lord, and may you continue to be with us as we continue to deliberate on our work before us. We ask all these in the mighty name of the Lord, Savior Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Director. May I kindly ask that we resume at 2 o'clock? I know lunch is served on site. Therefore, our lunch has been shortened to roughly 35 minutes. So I'll see you all at 2 o'clock. Thank you.
When we come back, Madam Chair, this is a Koshai. Maybe my intervention was not recorded up there. I wanted to know if you or Jean or the economists can maybe share some takeaways on the full presentation, linking those presentation with the theme, the topic that will be covered this afternoon. Is that okay with you?
Thank you, Director. Yes, we heard you, and we'll put together a summary of the 4 presentations that were just made. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think for Chuk, we resume at 1 o'clock. That's 2 o'clock your time.
Sorry about that, Chukin. Yeah, yes, 1 o'clock your time. Thank you.
Test. Testing 1, 2, live test, live test.
Recording stopped.
Kailangan din kumpulkan karas na ko pwede live broadcast ng liki and may second language men kabese kay med FSM telecommunications kin pachuan ko na pata on live broadcast ng liki kay kisliya ko kay melayang ichungol sa karataan na po ata langata sa mga live language so cheka kuyawi amuwe imen pachuan kay sa pantiya chuman kapungkalangan o pachuan pachang sa karatakan may pachuan na babatar o na live broadcast ng liki nawiwiyawan sang Konsaka all ni Chen Pasarawi and Maria Kalangan na Pacho Colonia. Erpuekisang ni Kalangan ni Rai, Tetanga ni Rai Chonadongka na FSM Telecommunications Corporation. Arayan pin ng Chianger on men kapelse and internet e kakairan ito success. Mechapiatak sa live broadcast may nilananto pen clock. Isaw, dimensangan ranwatch. Hari, nintuan na nagbancho na daw ng Fisheries, may Bachuan Muniante, Commissioner, Merit Management, and Station Watch. O Bachuan Muya at Chuang Sakaratan Kaping Kalangan, ang absent Kaplan Wayne Ponpay, Speaker and Ponpay Legislature, Right Wing Popasan at Kankoras, FSM National Government, Mary Lobson President, and Kanta Kabachabacha Micronesia. Huachumal Wang Choror, Pan Bachalang FSM Telecommunications Corporation. Puerki Sawas Kachabankan, Napaliwach Kineuki, Fisheries Radio, Alayang Sabulmarmen Kapesekan, Meron na ito kasang malakan, and kakamiyaw na long way chekan, and iwin mas nagpin Wayne Ponpay. Pilwang Choror, Babachalang Ponpay, this corporation, Kulang Town Government, NGOs kan, may IOM, Palikan Koras, Makinyang Sausawas, Ong Nan, Men Kapesekan, Niyachkin Sawasawan Bang, Yang Chorway, Babanan Ponpay Usap, Metuwacharan Watch, Summit, Napachuan Miawi, the Maching Lab, and Nanavasem, Owen Kakan Daniwang Nagankala and Wayne Ponpay, Poran Kakan Yangaching Mamami Pene, Patpachuan Pene, Namasani Pene, Maching Pasanti, and Ranwach Napuita, Miawiyar, Ni Our Lady of Mercy, Nankonsaka, all Napachu Colonia Town. Management and Radio Physics AH, Commissioner Oachiman Chonatongkan Koros, and Pachuan Miachuan Sagaran Bisip Pagma, Kwek Wasakan, Machuan Kototo, and Pakita, Program Pasantilas Tongkolakan, Masagan Pachuan and Eokiyong, Chon Way Paganan Pon Payung Sag, Ranwach. Tana Sansaler, Maching Pasanti, Mawiyawiyat, and Punganaray, Namalapkan and FSM, Wasansan, Mesamalay Yakupur, the Summit Watch, Iran Katsangat, Nan Maching Pasanti, the Summit Watch, all Nan Komanan Sawas, Utana Sansaler, Pachuan Kumurabor, Pimachay, Kankoras, the Pepeyan, Sabulmarmen Kapesekan, and AM radio station, Cable TV Channel Instagram, live feed Facebook, YouTube, Bombay Public Broadcasting Corporation, or FM 9.7, all non-program, the live and Ranwatch. Nuwam and Pachuan Mulianti, Commissioner Wachuan Chonatongkan Koras, Pachuan Puseway, Achuan Ranwa Kapay, Wachuan Kapang Kalangan, Pachuan Korusian, Pagkachinye Yankich, and a Ryan broadcast and AM radio station, Away Sakwano, ng Cable TV, Channel Instagram, live feed Facebook, YouTube, FM 89.7, and radio broadcast Away Sakbayo. Pilkapyong ang Town Government, Kuya Kuchechen sa Wasan na Tongkan, o kapyong ang Korusian maging paybayan sa Bulma, o ang Machuman Kapesekan. Kalangan ng Korusian, Match Makairala live broadcast and Ranwatch, Kasadeliye, Maipo.
Thank you.